Hello and welcome to this conference hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. I'm your host, Deborah Foreman, the Educational Programs Coordinator for MS Focus, and I'm joined today by Dr. Drew Leader, who will be talking to us about how to heal when there is no cure. After his presentation, we'll open it up to your questions and comments. And now I'm delighted to introduce our speaker. Drew Leader, MD, PhD, is a professor of Eastern and Western philosophy at Loyola University in Maryland. He is the author of some 7 books, both scholarly and popular, and more than 50 articles on topics ranging across the philosophy of medicine, aging, cross-cultural spirituality, and criminal justice. Drew is an internationally known speaker whose groundbreaking work has been featured in media outlets ranging from the Washington Post and Chicago Tribune to Family Circle. His newest book is Healing Body, the basis of his presentation today. We're pleased to have him join us to present this important topic. And Dr. Leader, thank you so much for being with us. And now I am going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Deborah, for inviting me. Thank you, everybody who's come to the session or is watching it on video. So I kind of wear 2 hats. I'm an MD, but I'm also a philosopher, professional philosopher. And I want to make it clear from the beginning, I'm not a practicing clinician, nor am I a specialist in MS. So I'm here to learn as much as I am to teach. But in my work in the medical humanities, philosophy and medicine, I've been focusing a lot on the issue of the experience of illness, and also especially how people deal with it creatively and constructively, which, as Deborah said, is kind of the focus of my new book, The Healing Body, Creative Responses to Illness, Aging, and Affliction. And I am going to pull up a PowerPoint and try to present some material that I hope will be helpful. I hope it will be news you can use, so to speak, although we'll be doing it quickly today. So let's see, I need to do share screen, and I'll take you into the PowerPoint. I will start the PowerPoint, and here's the book that we were referring to. And the first thing I want to talk about is a distinction that is drawn in the medical humanities between disease versus illness. Now, of course, we often use those words interchangeably, but in a technical context, I'll reserve the term disease for the kind of biomedical assessment, diagnosis, treatment of an entity. For example, today we're here to talk about multiple sclerosis, which is a biomedically defined disease. That doesn't really capture, though, the experience of having an illness. I use that term to refer to all the ways in which the symptomatology affects, changes, and sometimes really disrupts your life. So let me start to focus on the bad stuff first, and then we'll go on to the good stuff, the healing modalities, very shortly. In illness, whether it's acute or chronic, and MS, it's a little bit unusual in combining elements of both, as you know better than I know. Disrupts, first of all, the relationship between yourself and your body. Ordinarily, we don't always even make that distinction. You know, like here I am speaking to you. We wouldn't say, you know, my body, my mouth is speaking words and your ears are hearing it. We would just say, I am speaking to you because I and my body function as one in health, but not so much in illness. In illness, the body surfaces as a kind of foreign object. What is happening with my hand? What is happening with my neurological function? The body can even seem like a kind of enemy or opponent that is disrupting our plans. We don't understand what's going on. We don't control it. Um, so there's a breakage, a kind of disintegration within our life. A second kind of disruption that can be a part of experienced illness is the disruption of our relationship with time, the temporal world. What I mean by this is ordinarily we are living in the present, but we're focused on future goals that we want to attain, and we're drawing on past experience and habits. So our time is our flow through time is seamlessly integrated, but not so much when we're hit with a serious illness. We may find ourselves frozen in the present, which is contracted down to pain or incapacity. So, we can't escape the present, but it's kind of an aversive present when we have serious symptoms. Our future may be called into question. I was going to do this evening. I'm not sure if I can go out on this social occasion, or even I wanted to go traveling next year. I may have to cancel that trip. Our relationship with the future is kind of broken. And also with the past. I used to be able to do this. I used to feel like this. And now suddenly I'm in a kind of different body, a different world, not only a different temporal world, but a disrupted spatial world. For example, I had a pretty serious peripheral neuropathy that led to pain in a region of my ankle. And suddenly my whole world focus contracted to this little region of my ankle, which was just shooting nerve pain in my direction. Moreover, I couldn't go on long walks with my dog. And so in that sense, my spatial world was contracting. I might not be able to go out to the grocery store or go out to a movie. So our world can become more limited spatially as well as temporally. And this affects our experience with other people. Ordinarily, once again, we're with our friends, we're with our coworkers, we're sharing a common reality. But illness can single us off because no one else is experiencing what's going on in my body. It's very difficult even to put it into words and communicate it, to find others who understand and have empathy. And even if they do, they're living their own lives. And I may not be able to socialize with them in the way I used to, or I may not be able to go into work on certain days. And so illness can be pretty isolating. One can feel lonely in going through this very challenging experience, precisely when you most would like the understanding and comfort of others. And ultimately, this can kind of disrupt the sense of what is my life about? What is the meaning of my life? I thought it had a certain narrative, a certain trajectory, and now illness has thrown that all into question. And even, what's going on in the universe? Like, what's the meaning of what has happened to me here? Is God angry with me in some way? Did God cause this to happen? Is it just the workings of impersonal biological mechanisms? Does the world make any sense? So it can bring about a kind of existential questioning or crisis. So you can see how a serious illness like MS can cause a lot of disruption. I don't know if you can identify with any of these, if you've experienced any of these. But let's start to talk about healing. And once again, I'll make a linguistic distinction between cure with MS, as with many diseases. There isn't a kind of magic bullet cure that just fixes it. But nonetheless, we can experience healing. And I use the word healing, it's from the same etymology as the word whole, W-H-O-L-E, or even the word holy, H-O-L-Y. And it implies that we find some wholeness, a way of reintegrating our existence, even in the face of all these disintegrations, these disruptions we've been discussing, so that we can have a satisfying and fulfilling life despite living with a challenging disease. So in a moment, let's talk about all the different strategies that people utilize. But first, why don't we do a poll question to get everybody involved? So Bhavya is putting on the screen. Question number one, I'll read the possible responses, and I'll just invite you to choose the one you most identify with of the three. When I am challenged by bodily problems, my style is mostly to A, ignore them as much as possible, B, refuse to be limited by them, or C, try to listen carefully to what my body is saying and care for it. I'll give you a moment to think about this and respond. It's kind of fun to see the poll results come rolling in and the lines increasing or decreasing. It looks like the winner is the last one, listening carefully to what your body. But if you were to add up the first two, ignore or refuse, it would equal or possibly even surpass. And if we can pull out of the poll and go back to the PowerPoint, I want to, I'm sorry, I realized that I was seeing something I wasn't sure you were seeing. Does everybody see the results?
I've stopped sharing the results, Dr. Leader, and your screen is the main one again.
Okay. So I see. I'm gonna close it out and I'll go back to my PowerPoint. And what I have here on the screen is, you can see it's something like a checker or chessboard. I'll call it a chessboard. And I'll refer to this as the chessboard of healing, because what I do in this new book, The Healing Body, is try to organize in a matrix according to different features of kind of living in a body, the different kind of possibility spaces, the different kinds of healing strategies that people can and do utilize when faced with the challenge of a chronic illness. And I'm hoping as we go through it very quickly, you're kind of thinking about, where do I place my pieces on the board? What are the primary strategies that I utilize? What are the strengths or weaknesses of them? And we'll talk about how each space has a positive side, but also a shadow side if it's used excessively or inappropriately. And are there maybe other spaces on the board I could move to, healing moves I could make that I haven't yet utilized? So the first two responses in that quiz refer to column number one. I said that you and your body are not quite one. Sometimes, especially in illness, your body is a kind of other to self. And this is not only a distressing disruption, but it also provides an avenue of healing, because many people do get away from, refuse to be limited by their disease by various modes of escaping from it, ignoring it, or simply refusing to be limited by it, or the last square, transcending. This refers to the notion that I'm more than just my body. I'm a creative person. I have an imagination, I have a mind. I can read and enjoy things intellectually. I have a spirit. I can pray. I can meditate. Whatever might be your religious or spiritual side, if you have one. And in all these ways, I rise above and escape, refuse to be limited by some of the challenging and distressing symptomatology that I'm experiencing. This all has a very positive side. If you're ignoring or refusing to be limited by your symptoms, you're going about your daily life, you're leading a normal life to the best of your ability. And even to take, for example, ignoring, scientists have found that the amount of pain that people experience is not only dependent on the peripheral stimulus, but the workings of the prefrontal and the frontal cortex in terms of how much we pay attention to it and sort of tune it up or down. And the good news is that when we ignore a source of pain, we often forget about it, or it kind of goes down, just as if there's a loud conversation going on in a cafe. If you pay a lot of attention to it, it sounds even louder, takes over your focus of attention. But if you ignore it, it dies away into the background. So these kinds of strategies can be very helpful, but as always, they can have a shadow side. People can get into trouble when they go overboard in ignoring their symptomatology or refusing to pay attention to what's going on in their body. They might injure themselves, they might delay getting helpful medical care. So you kind of have to watch out for the downside of your strategy as well as embracing the positive side. If we skip over to what would be more in line with response number 3 in the poll question, we can not only move away from our body at times of illness, but we can move closer to our body. We can embrace our body. For example, we can accept, I'm having MS symptoms. Sometimes we cause a lot of unnecessary distress through modes of resistance. I refuse to accept what I have. I don't want to be a person with MS. I hate this. I deny this. Some of that unnecessary suffering can diminish if we just accept, well, this is the reality. And I, maybe more than I used to, maybe more than some other people, I need to listen very carefully to the messages coming from my body. I need to befriend it. It's not my enemy or opponent. We're working together on this. Witnessing is a kind of Buddhist inflected mindfulness approach that is increasingly used in major medical centers to help people kind of witness, be aware of things that are going on in their body without having a tremendous amount of emotional reactivity, because sometimes it's not the original symptom that is so disturbing, but it's the fear, it's the resistance, it's the whole emotional reaction that we lay upon it. And learning to just kind of witness what's going on without that can be very liberating. I'm going to continue kind of little rapidly going through this chessboard of healing, remaking the body. You may discover either when you're having acute bouts, kind of acute MS relapses or a more chronic progression, that your body is in a process of change. Restoring kind of means I want to go back to restoring a previous state. So sometimes we work hard on our recovery and rehabilitation because we want in the present to be able to reclaim what we were able to do and what we were able to feel in the past. Very valid. But transforming is saying, you know what, my body itself has changed enough. It itself is transforming that I have to transform my patterns of usage in response. I'm not just going to restore a previous state. I have to adjust. For example, if someone has become wheelchair bound, they're transforming their motility, their way of moving through the world, and incorporating, if we go down to the next square, means to bring within your bodily habits, your bodily patterns of usage, something that was previously external. For example, if you first start to use a wheelchair, it's outside of you, it's a technology. But as you become more accustomed to it, you can forget about it. You use it more seamlessly, just as when you get in a car, you press on the accelerator, you drive, you steer, but you don't even need to think about it because it's become part of your bodily schema. You can listen to the radio, you can talk with a friend, and your body simply has this capacity to move 60 miles an hour down the road. And similarly, we sometimes need to incorporate technologies to help make up for those original bodily capacities that have been taken away by the disease. We go on to the next column. We've gotten into the dimension of time. And if, for example, I'll stick with that person who has a more kind of chronic, longstanding form of the illness, and maybe they are wheelchair bound, they could remember the fact that even though they're not capable of climbing a mountain, they have in the past. They've had a rich and wonderful life filled with travel and satisfactions and accomplishments, and this may bring them consolation. Anticipating is looking toward the future. Right now, I'm limited, but I'm hoping these symptoms may pass, or the medication may kick in, or the new specialist may be able to help me, or even a new breakthrough in medical research may bring a new treatment. All kinds of looking forward to the future for when things will be better. This also can be a very helpful healing strategy. It gives us hope, gives us motivation, it gives us persistence as we work toward our recovery. However, a shadow side for both remembering the past, anticipating the future, is that we may fail to live fully in the present. Presencing is saying, I don't know how much time I have. None of us know how much time we have in this life. I don't know what my capacities will be 5, 10, 15 years down the road, but I want to live fully now. I want to appreciate, I want to be with friends, I want to enjoy the beauty of a fall day. So this also can be a very healing strategy. And sometimes illness actually makes us become more present to the moment, less future oriented. The last square I have here, re-envisioning, basically means we might have had a certain vision of our life, what it was about, what we were going to accomplish, what lay in our future. And suddenly the disease challenges all that. And we have to come up with a new narrative. We have to re-envision what our life is about, what we want to do with it, what is most meaningful, which relationships are most meaningful. We have to kind of rewrite the narrative. This can take a while to do. It's not always productive. Sometimes people, a shadow side can be they come up with a new vision that's quite negative. God is punishing me, or my life is meaningless and worthless. But hopefully, from within their own resources or with the help of friends or even clinicians and therapists, they can come to a positive, creative story about what is happening and what will happen in their life. So why don't we do a little bit more polling, get a little bit more interactive, and go on to poll number 2. Thank you, Bhavya. I'll read it aloud. We're going to go a little bit into our relationship with the medical system. So the question is, in my context with the medical and parentheses insurance system, I have felt, choose the one you most identify with, mostly cared for and supported, greatly benefited by modern scientific medicine, disappointed in the benefits of my treatment or in their side effects, or treated in a dehumanizing fashion as if I were just a number or a disease. You may identify to a degree with all of these at different times and different moments, but just choose the one that most stands out for you as dominant within your experience. So it looks like a lot of positive responses, that people have felt cared for and supported, but not totally. There also are definitely people who have felt disappointed in medicine, or even treated in a dehumanizing fashion, that there's some unfortunate side effects of our very contact with the medical system. And talking about our relationship with other people and not only clinicians, why don't we do poll number 3? So everybody sees the results. And Bhavya, are we able to go on to?
Yeah, Dr. Leader, if you control it and you try to X out of it, then I cannot do it. So I will launch
Okay.
this one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little bit uncertain about giving it back and forth during the polling. So question number 3, the most challenging thing for me in interacting with others is A, finding others who really understand and empathize with what I'm going through. B, being careful not to blame myself for having the illness or suffering flare-ups. C, learning how to ask for and accept help from others. And D, knowing that I still have much to give to the world despite being limited by MS. These are heavy questions. So Bhavya, just to be clear, everybody's able to see the results?
Yes, they are, and it's
Okay.
anonymous, so I can
Okay.
end the poll in 10 more seconds.
Okay, and I won't touch those controls anymore. So mostly the challenging thing most people say are finding people who really understand and empathize, but there certainly are votes for learning how to accept help from others and also knowing that I have much to give. So if we end the poll, this is then a good lead in. So I'm going to, can everybody see my PowerPoint again?
Yes, we're still on the last column with retiming the body.
Okay, so I'm going to have to work my way backwards. I skipped over a column earlier called Reconnecting the Body, which, we talked about how the body can feel and the person can feel rather isolated from others. But in and through our body, we're also connected with others. After all, our body was made by the body of our parents. We were birthed out of the body of our mother. We were fed and nurtured by others. We also were gazed at and perhaps evaluated by others insofar as we're a body. There are all kinds of ways in which we interact with other people. In the first square, being objectified, I'm kind of talking about the way in which we give our body over to the medical system, kind of the way we might give our car over to a mechanic. Take a look at it, explore what's going on inside me, diagnose what's happening in my mechanical functioning. See if you can fix it, put in a new part or fix a broken part, which in the case of our bodies, not a car, might mean give me a medication or give me a surgical procedure or give me another kind of a therapeutic treatment. And many of us, maybe all of us, feel that this is a beneficial square to use on a chessboard of healing strategies because clinicians have so much to offer us. And I was talking with Deborah and Bhavya about some of the newer treatments for MS and how there's been a lot of progress over the last 5-10 years in treating this disease. We also, in poll number 3, we also admitted sometimes there can be a negative or shadow side in terms of being frustrated with the medical system. The treatments are insufficient. The costs can be enormous. And sometimes we can feel dehumanized by being part of this giant system where our body is being treated kind of like a car, like a mechanic. So we turn to others to treat us not as an object, but as a subject with them. Communing, we might turn to others who actually have a similar illness going on. For example, participating in this wonderful MS Foundation, we get to meet other people who are struggling with some of the same challenges and sharing our experience with them. And this may kind of cut in half our suffering when we know that there are others like us. And it doesn't have to be someone with MS. It could be a family member or a friend who is empathic, a good listener and can understand. And also we interact with others through receiving help. Someone may assist us with the activities of daily living or take us to a doctor's visit. And we find that even though we're not able to do something physically that we once were able to, other people step in with their more capable bodies. And it's natural that we are not just independent, autonomous persons, though our culture puts such an emphasis on that. We're interdependent with one another. And finally, even though we have a disease that may limit us, we still have much to give, sometimes despite the disease. We can work around it and find ways to give, or sometimes even because of the disease, we've become more compassionate or we've become more resilient. It actually enables us to be more present and more giving than maybe we were previously. So we've sort of worked our way very quickly around this notion of a chessboard of healing strategies. And the idea, this is a bit of a primitive slide. But the idea is if you evaluate kind of your own, how you're playing the chess game, let's say if we look at the first board, here's somebody who's ignoring and refusing to be limited by their illness. They go to the clinicians, the consent to be objectified and assisted by modern medicine. And at the same time, they're kind of remembering the way they used to be, maybe frustrated that they are no longer. They're anticipating things may get better in the future, but once again, they're kind of resistant to what's happening in the present. But what if they were to change their chess strategy? What if they were to move their pieces onto some different spaces? For example, now they're communing, they're participating in a MS self-help group and talking with others. They're speaking up when they need help from family and friends, learning how to receive that help graciously, and also as they accept that they have MS, and they learn to listen more closely to their body and befriend it. They also find they still have much to give to other people. And they're presencing, they're realizing the richness that's available to them right now, not just looking to their past or their future. So maybe they're exploring, different strategies on this chessboard of healing. And I'm just kind of closing with a self-referential slide, my website. If you were simply to Google my name, Drew Leader, you probably would arrive at this rather quickly. And you would see kind of workshops that I'm running that are, allow one to explore this in more depth, or this new book, The Healing Body, that explains each of these strategies, the benefits and the drawbacks in much greater depth. But let's do one more poll question and then kind of open it up for your questions, your comments, your sharing. So why don't we do poll number 4, Bhavya? So having an illness is not just awful stuff and disruptions. It also can be a positive experience if we kind of work creatively with it. The most positive thing that has come out of having MS, it has made me stronger, more resilient. It has made me more compassionate. It has helped me focus on what is most important in life. It has helped me grow closer with others important to me. You may identify a bit with all of these or more than one, but you're choosing the one that stands out most powerfully. So the winner by a small margin, it has helped me focus on what's most important in life, but it has also made me stronger, more resilient, more compassionate, grow closer. There's some votes for each of them. So enough from me. I really want to hear from you and see if there were any things that I was talking about that is resonant for you. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, why don't we open it up for sharing? And
Okay.
I'm going to exit out of my PowerPoint. Actually, I guess what I should do is simply stop sharing.
Actually, Dr. Leader, you did perfect. You got it off your screen. I see you, I see me.
Okay.
And so why don't I go ahead, since it is time for questions, I'll go ahead and tell those that have not attended our Zoom webinars before how to do that, okay, in case they're not familiar with it. So if you have a question or comment, you can ask it using the Q&A button in the app. which also allows you to send your question anonymously if you choose. Or you can just ask your question live by raising your hand. And to do so, just click the raise hand button or press *9 if you're on your phone. I can call on you at that time and you'll just have to unmute yourself to ask the question. So let's see, as of right this second, I do not, oh, we do have one. Okay, Diana is saying, my question is when you have multiple sclerosis and other disease or another disease and you're in pain all the time, what's something that I can do to make me feel better?
I can really identify with that question, having suffered from chronic nerve pain and chronic back pain. And it's a great question. I think it's probably one of the hardest questions to respond to because pain is so all absorbing and so aversive. It's probably one of the hardest symptoms to work with. And, in terms of this chessboard of healing strategies, the first one I would think of is, being objectified. Go to a clinician, see if there's a medication that can help lower the pain. I assume you've already done that to some extent. We've talked a little bit about ignoring, trying not to become all absorbed in the pain, but trying to use modes of distraction. Binge watching a series on Netflix, calling a friend and getting deeply absorbed in it, in the conversation, even if you are starting out just by complaining about your pain. Another place on the chessboard I skipped over is called imagining, where you actually work with your mind and your imagination. When I was dealing with chronic pain, I would do things I would imagine myself lying on the beach and maybe the ocean waves washing over me and washing away the pain. Or I would imagine my foot in ice water and the intense cold just taking away the pain. And it helped a little bit. It didn't help entirely, but working with my imagination helped to, bring my mind into play. And then I also mentioned that strategy of kind of Buddhist witnessing, where instead of even calling it pain, you just kind of notice, oh, there's this vibratory sensation that is running through my, the lower part of my hand. And it feels like it's pulsating and growing. And what you're doing is you're trying to disconnect from the emotional reactivity. You might notice I'm experiencing some fear. I'm experiencing some displeasure, but you're not getting totally caught up in this sense of the suffering. So I don't know if any of those ideas will be helpful, but those are kind of different places on the chessboard of healing that might be relevant.
Thank you. And we do have somebody with their hand up. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead. Actually, let's see, that is just disappeared. Let me try that again. Flavia, it just disappeared again. So
it disappeared because I think they lowered it, but they just raised it again if you want to call on them.
Good. And that's Tammy who has a question for you. And Tammy, I'm going to click on that. You'll just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, guys. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to be able to unmute, so I put it in the chat. So ignore the chat. My question is, Dr. Leader, you had mentioned that and please correct me if I misunderstood this. You had mentioned that the prefrontal cortex kind of comes into play when we are either ignoring or kind of focusing on our illness and our symptoms and so forth. But in MS, obviously we can certainly have lesions in that prefrontal cortex. And so it seems like we could almost have an indirect and a direct influence, both with the illness itself influencing it directly, and then that kind of psychological or philosophical indirect influence. So I'm wondering if you can kind of comment on that in terms of MS specifically.
Yeah. In a certain sense, I want to respond yes and no. I'll start with the no. I'm not a specialist in MS, and so I'm not as qualified to respond as certain people you might have on a webinar who really are MS doctors. To the extent that I do understand it, and the people going through it probably have a much deeper understanding than I do, it's very variable in the way that it affects different people's neurological symptoms. And so what's going on in your body mind, and I won't think of it dualistically as you have your body and you have your mind, but think of it more as it's kind of a single entity, because what's going on neurologically may affect you emotionally, it may affect you cognitively, and this may be through a direct effect on the nervous system and its myelination. In a way, you have to almost become your own doctor, and in this chessboard of healing strategies, I'm saying a lot of this healing is not done by the physician. It's done by the patient in the privacy of their own home, because they know their body mind better than anyone else does. They know what strategies they're able to kind of work with at a given moment when they're dealing with acute symptoms or when they're dealing with the chronic progression. They know when they need to accept help from others. They know when they may need a clinical answer and up their medications. They may know whether ignoring kind of works for them in tuning down the pain signal, or really doesn't work for them because of something going on with them neurologically. So I almost want to turn the question around and say, instead of Tammy, you asking me what will work for you, me asking you, what does work for you? I don't know if you want to respond to that or not, but it's at least a rhetorical question, do you want to respond in any way to what I just said?
I don't know if I.
You can speak.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I think I didn't think of it that way as you were explaining it. So I think it just really demonstrates kind of the importance of using those strategies. I guess in a nutshell, then you can really the idea is to overcome perhaps what maybe some of that neurological effect is by using these strategies. Then that's really kind of what you're getting us to think about.
I think MS is complicated, right? Because it is affecting you in a whole variety of ways. And it may affect which, places on the chessboard will or will not work for you at any given time. If you have a flare-up in such a way that you're functionally immobile, it's not going to help to refuse to be limited by your symptom or to ignore it. You're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to start by accepting it, listening to your body, receiving help from others, calling up your physician and using that kind of objectification stuff. So this chessboard notion is encouraging people to be strategists who are always changing their strategy in response to whatever the disease is doing it on its side. I don't want to call the disease your opponent exactly, but it's making moves on its side of the chessboard. And you're going to have to respond by making skillful moves on your side. That in many ways, you're going to have to kind of figure out experientially if this talk or if my book or workshops help you intellectually to begin to figure it out, and then you can bring it into experience, that would be great. By the way,
Excellent.
talking about intellectual, somebody said, I'm a big reader. I'm interested in your book. Is there any other books you recommend? I put one in the chat area by a friend of mine who's working in a very similar space and has written a wonderful book. He had a heart attack as a very young man and really thought deeply about illness and embodiment. It's called One Beat More by Kevin Aho, A-H-O. So I put that in the chat area.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
question.
you.
So let's see. We have somebody who's saying they totally relate to your first slide, which is nice. And then in terms of the person who's asking if this presentation is available afterwards, yes, it is. On our YouTube channel, you're going to be able to see that for many, 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 many months at your leisure. And it'll be on Facebook today. And I'm not positive how long it stays on Facebook, but it will be in about a week or two on YouTube. You'll be able to see this over and over again. So James says, I have MS and recently have been suffering with mental illness. Do you have any suggestions on how to cope? Dr. Leader?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. Good.
That's I'm thinking about how to respond and even whether it's appropriate to respond, because I feel without knowing the specifics, is it depression? Is it an anxiety disorder? Is it even experiencing delusional hallucinations or whatever, which can happen when people are affected neurologically? My response would be very different. So I feel this is one where it really is helpful to work with a skillful clinician. Hopefully people are working with a whole MS team that includes a therapist, a psychologist, whatever, or can refer someone to a psychiatrist where one can get that kind of expert help from someone who's psychologically very knowledgeable, but also knowledgeable about the disease of MS. And I know there are such specialists. By the way, I'm also seeing in the Q&A, if you don't mind me responding, Deborah, Mata is asking, is hiding the disease from others a good approach in general or not? I'm not an expert in the way that you're an expert in deciding what's healing for you, but I would say in general, probably not, because then it can encourage almost feelings of shame, like I have something that's wrong with me that I need to hide from others because they would judge it or disapprove of it in some ways. And you're unable to receive and elicit help from others. You're unable to commune with others in the way that I was talking about. So I think in the long run, it's probably a counterproductive chess strategy, so to speak. In the short run, in specific situations, I can imagine one could say, there's no need for me to inform everybody that I have MS. I'm going to be able to function perfectly well in this work setting or in this social setting. But the people who are closer to me, I'm definitely going to let them know about this and receive help and understanding. So in particular situations, it could be kind of a judgment call.
Okay,
Deborah, I'll turn it back
Yeah.
over to you.
we have somebody who's, I'm not quite sure what they're saying, but is it that should only rely on traditional medicine over functional medicine? I don't know that they spelled the beginning correctly, so I'm not sure what they mean, but maybe they're asking,
Uh,
should she rely or he rely on traditional medicine over functional medicine?
I wonder, I'm not, I'm just going to confess, I'm not super clear on the meaning of functional medicine and how it differs from traditional medicine. I don't know if the questioner would like to speak up or someone else in the meeting who
Yep.
is clear on this.
That's a good point. If that person would like to ask the question directly, I'm happy to, there they are. I guess they do. So
Right.
there you go. I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Hello. So I'm not sure why it didn't have me right. I didn't type the whole question out. So why is there a reliance on traditional medicine and pharmaceuticals as opposed to functional medicine? Thanks.
And what do you mean by functional medicine? I just want to be clear about that.
Functional medicine as in relying on things that come from the earth as opposed to or not traditional, the
Yeah.
conventional, pills and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I'm a believer, to use that metaphor, the chessboard of healing. The more strategies you have at your disposal, it's almost the better, because some might work at different times for different things. For example, I mentioned that I had this weird peripheral neuropathy. I still have it. That was causing me acute chronic pain. And various things have helped with it. I'm on a medicine for it. I had a surgery that helped to repair the nerve. That was enormously beneficial. But I also have seen an acupuncturist. I've seen an energy and massage healer. I've also used a Chinese method called Qigong, where I deliberately bring in energies from the earth, from the sky, from the trees, from the river. And I go walking with my dog 2 hours every day, which shows how much my nerve problem has improved. And the Qigong, I think at one point prevented me from having to have a second surgery. So different people believe in different things and use different methods. I almost believe in all of it, traditional and non-traditional medicine. And you explore and you find what you believe in and what helps you as an individual. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Good, great question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so now let's see. We have a couple more minutes. If anybody has another question, I'm sure Dr. Leader would be happy to answer it.
And I also welcome comments and responses. If people were like, this is the part I really identified with, it was helpful, or this wasn't helpful, or whatever. It's helpful for me to know, and maybe others participating, if anyone wishes to share their experience.
I know Doris made a comment about mindfulness.
And I see a hand is raised.
Let's see. Okay, Maciel, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead, you're on. You have to unmute. You got it.
I wanted to ask, how do you know when a mess is affecting your mind?
I'm sorry, but could you repeat that?
How do you know when a mess is affecting your mind?
In other words, that really you're having cognitive impairment. I'm a little, once again, here's where I'm going to invoke the fact that I don't feel like enough of an MS clinician to be able to respond. I don't know, Deborah, if that's something you would.
No,
wish to respond to in a
I
minute?
think you're right that you are not an MS clinician. So that question would be more appropriately directed to her neurologist, maybe, or
Yeah,
specialist.
Well,
uh,
I meant like, how do you know if it's affecting your emotional balance?
yeah,
That
in
is
other words,
affecting your mind so much that it's getting to your to your emotional side.
yeah, it's a good question because of course, any kind of illness, let's say if MS was causing manual dysfunction in your hand, you're going to have an emotional reaction to that. Any person would. But then because it's in your neurological system, there might be some way in which it's also affecting kind of your central nervous system and emotional responsivity. And that could be a play too. And Deborah, I know you wouldn't count yourself as an MS clinician, but
I wouldn't.
how would you respond to that question of
I
is
would
it?
respond that if you think, if anyone is even contemplating that they're having some emotional issues due to their MS, you either speak to your neurologist or you see a mental health counselor, and you speak with them and find out, maybe they're better at determining if it is something caused by MS, and if it's not or is, maybe they can work on that. I mean, that's if I had MS and I thought that I was having problems, I would go to a psychologist, a social worker. I'd go to somebody to find out if that's what it was. I mean, that's what I would do. So,
Yeah, and I'm
Asiel,
sorry.
does that make sense to you? Nope, I think I lost her.
Yeah,
But I think that's, you would ask
Yes,
your
yes,
doctor.
it does.
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I'm
so
not having
yeah,
those type of issues. I wonder like that was just a question that I was wondering
yeah,
about.
Yeah. And
I-
if I might interject once more, I think that people that love you, that surround you, are a good judge of if you are changing in that respect. If you see changes in someone you live with or someone that you love, they might very well be a good person to ask, are these changes happening with me? And maybe I'm just not recognizing it. So it's a good
I,
beginning.
I think it's true with many diseases, but it is particularly true with MS that it can be confusing.
Mhm.
What's going on in my body and mind? Is this caused directly by the MS, or am I just reacting to having an illness? And as Deborah said, sometimes other people can help figure that out more than we can, whether it's family and friends, or whether it's a clinician looking at our baseline functioning, giving us a certain kind of emotional or neurological test.
Mhm.
But it's natural to be confused, and it's great to look outward for assistance in trying to understand better what's going on and how to cope with that.
Yeah. Thank you, Maciel. I hope that helped. I hope that helped. Okay, so since we are a bit over time, I think what we should do is maybe let's take our last question. And we said, sorry, this is off the subject, but has anyone ever told you that you favor Doc from the Love Boat? That's Tawana that wants to ask you that.
I haven't. I'm going to have to look up that show, and hopefully the guy's is a stud muffin, but I suspect not.
Oh, that's
Um,
very cute. Very cute. Okay, so I don't think we have any more questions. So I think
can I just do one more? Because there is
sure.
actually
Sure.
interesting sort of two-part question in the chat area, and I'll try to keep it very
Let's see.
brief. From Mata, thank you very much. How much can a positive attitude help us in our healing journey? Doesn't paying more attention to disease strengthen its existence? One patient tell me to take it out of your personality. What is your idea about this viewpoint? It's actually maybe a three-part question. I do think taking a positive attitude is really important. I mean, it sucks. I don't think it's great to be in denial and pretend life has given us lemons and therefore we're always going to make lemonade out of it. Sometimes we just have to deal with crying or, hitting our pillow, letting out some anger, because it's difficult and frustrating. But in the long run, if we only stay frustrated and angry and upset, of course, that's what will characterize our journey through life. Everybody's got something, I'm getting older. I mentioned my chronic nerve problem. I had very serious back surgery. Sooner or later, we all get something. And we just have to deal with the hand that life has given us. And keeping a positive attitude helps us to play the poker hand, to change metaphors, or work with the chessboard of healing strategies as best we can. Doesn't paying more attention to this disease strengthen its existence? Here's, I think, that question about whether ignoring it and refusing to be limited by it and defined by it, sometimes that's really helpful. I'm just going to live life as best I can as a normal person. Sometimes it's unproductive. It has a shadow side because our body is almost like tugging on our sleeve saying, pay attention. I need help. You're pushing me beyond my limit. I can't do what you're planning to do. And that's when we may need to move our chess piece to listening to our body, befriending our body, and paying attention to the disease. So here's where, once again, our strategy may need to shift at different times. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Deborah, for hosting this.
Yes, you're welcome. Just one last thing I'm going to read, and then we can go and say goodbye to everyone. But I love this. Someone by the name of TAM, and I can't read the rest of the name, says, I really love the concept of having all of these strategies in a toolkit to use as needed. As you mentioned, MS changes. So we need to use different things at different times. So many people lock into one way of thinking, being. So this approach is really important. Thank you for sharing. I think that was really nice.
Beautiful way to end it. I'm so happy not to have the last word, even though I'm sort of having the last word, but that was a beautiful summation of what I wish I would have been able to say as clearly. So thank you.
So this does bring us to the end of our time. If you've missed any part of this conference, it has been recorded and will be available, as I said, through the MS Focus Facebook and YouTube channels. Reply to your registration email for information on how to access the recordings, or even to sign up for our newsletter to learn about upcoming events. Our next teleconference will be Tuesday, November 7th at 4:30 p.m. Dr. Ben Thrower is going to be presenting Attack of the Immune System and Dealing with MS Relapses. As you leave the conference today, a survey is going to appear on your screen. We ask that each of you take a moment just to give us your feedback on this program and your suggestions for future topics. Our goal is to provide you the very best and most meaningful programs available. Our sincere thanks to all of our attendees for your participation, and especially to Dr. Leader. Thank you so much for your time that you spent on preparing and for sharing this information with us. Goodbye, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. Be well.